Welcome to the BNB Investing Podcast for real estate investors. Fix and flippers and realtors exploring investment options with Airbnbs and short-term rentals through acquisition, leasing, or management to generate consistent monthly revenue. Join us for a chat with experienced and successful short-term rental investors to hear their story of how they got started and created wealth by building scalable businesses. We also explore various service providers and lenders that help make our businesses more efficient and maximize revenue in this awesome sharing economy. Welcome your host, Rich Munroe.
There we go.
Hey everyone, Rich Munroe here with BNB Investing Group. Thanks for jumping on today. BNB Investing Group helps short-term rental investors navigate between acquisitions, master leasing, and managing properties. If you're interested in learning how to build a scalable business in the short-term rental space, feel free to reach out to me directly on Facebook Messenger, and we'll have a quick call, kind of see where you're at, what your goals are, and if you're kind of ready to get aggressive with growth, we'll be happy to kind of see how we can help you out. So we've got a good friend of mine on today, Jeff Cox. He's with Cox Construction Design. And, Jeff is definitely a seasoned veteran investor, and I'm kind of anxious to kind of dig into what he's doing with accessory dwelling units and kind of helping investors with that entire process. And so, Jeff, welcome. Thanks for jumping on today. Would love to start with
thanks for having me.
Yeah, love to start with maybe giving us a little background on what your history has been with real estate.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you having me on board. I got into the business this month. Actually, is always a special month for us because it's our anniversary month. So 5 years ago, this month, I got into the investment space here in Atlanta, Georgia, and started out flipping houses, like probably many of you on this call. And every year we would flip these houses, and we just continued to see prices elevate. Right, prices kept climbing in town Atlanta. Market kept getting more expensive year over year, and so I remember having a conversation one night with my wife, and we were like, people that serve these communities really can't afford to live in them. They're getting priced out of the market because of how expensive housing is. And so Atlanta in, I want to say it was 2018, don't quote me on that, introduced legislation making it legal to build accessory dwelling units in the city of Atlanta. And so there was some friends of ours that are also investors and have a construction company and whatnot, built an ADU and held a private event that my wife and I went to one night. And this is like 4 years ago. And I remember just like walking in and a light bulb went off. And I said, this right here is a solution for affordable housing in Atlanta. And because I have a construction company and we also build, we build in-house, it's a very quick, simple math equation. Market rents for ADUs in town Atlanta. And when I say market rent, I'm talking about putting somebody in an ADU for 12 months. Our lowest ADU right now rents out for $2,500 a month. And then we've had short-term rental. We had a short-term rental business as well. And, we were bringing in anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 a month per ADU. Just depends on, kind of your risk tolerance and what you're trying to achieve with your investment goals. But yeah, in essence, started out just flipping houses, like I mentioned, got into new construction, and then now I'm really passionate about high density development and trying to bring accessory dwelling units to the market. And so, I think that, you're starting to see some doors and opportunities open in the high density development space, especially with like loan products. I don't know if you guys saw recently, Fannie Mae announced probably a few weeks ago now that homeowners can get a conventional loan on a 2 to 4 unit development and put down as little as 5%. So essentially, with interest rates where they are, they're trying to help, people achieve the American dream, right? Get into home ownership. And so those people that do work in the ADU space or are going to work in the ADU space, your property values just went up, right? Because now there's more demand for that type of product. And so, yeah, that's kind of a quick introduction of where I'm at. And, I've got a few different businesses, all in investment real estate. We built spec construction here in Atlanta, and then recently this year, launched a business to build excuse me, accessory dwelling units for consumers. And then also have a company that holds our rental properties. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself and kind of where we're at today.
Awesome, awesome. So yeah, a lot of us still do fix and flipping today, and some new construction. So it's interesting that you've kind of gravitated towards the ADU niche. I think I remember the open house that you're mentioning about 4 years ago, and I think I think managed that ADU for that couple for a short period of time when they were first getting it up and running, and it's definitely one of those things that once you experience it in person and understand kind of the utilization of a small space and the efficiency of that, and not to mention the revenue numbers, right? And so, I think for a long time now, it's, even though these are typically studios or maybe one bedrooms. Square footage is usually what's the average square footage?
Yeah, so really it's going to depend on jurisdiction, but City of Atlanta maximum square footage is 750 square feet. And so, when you look at 750 square feet, it's not a lot of space, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we spent a lot of time working with like local architects to figure out how to utilize that space and still make it function. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think the one that you mentioned had more of kind of a loft, had a loft above, I think, the kitchen area,
Mhm.
which makes a great use of space. So are most of the floor plans that you work with kind of having that loft concept, or is there another type of design that's equally utilized?
Yeah, so we have with our ADU program, we have there's 4 models, and two models are 1 bedroom, 1 bath with a loft, and that loft can be converted into a second bedroom, if you will. And then we have 2 other plans that are 2 bedroom, 2 bath plans. One's single story and one's a 2 story. And those are obviously the most popular plans for most people that buy them from us, simply because especially folks that are looking to add additional income streams. Having that second bedroom and second bathroom is critical. If you go back to what I said earlier in terms of market rent being $2,500 a month, that gives somebody an opportunity to have a roommate, and you split that rent. And our competition in town Atlanta is going to be like your 1 bedroom studio apartments that lease out in like the low 2000s a month. So if
Hmm.
you're able to split that rent and you're in an ADU in a very desirable area that's new construction, you're not sharing walls, for under $1,300 a month, that's pretty affordable. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think on the short-term rental side, the 4 to 6 thousand a month in gross rental revenue, you're typically looking at we're anywhere between 250 to 350 per night. I believe is a nightly rate, depending on the area. At first, I thought that the ADU tiny home type thing was going to be more of kind of a nostalgic thing that loses popularity, but that doesn't seem to be the case, right? I mean, I think it's continuing to be a popular option for folks that are traveling and using short-term rentals.
yeah, absolutely.
And there's the whole tiny home movement of people that have downsized and kind of prefer to have less than these larger homes. And there's a whole movement of folks that are kind of moving that direction. And hence the long-term rental. I mean, that's tremendous to be able to do 2,500 a month in revenue on a property that small. There's a lot of 4 and 5 bedroom houses that are kind of still a little bit below that in rents in certain areas. So that's tremendous that you're able to kind of garner that type of revenue. And I think a lot of the folks in Atlanta, besides investors, people that are excuse me, downsizing or retiring, this is a easy way to supplement your income by doing one of two things. You add the AD unit and you either move into that yourself and rent out the primary home or vice versa. And so it's a good way to kind of supplement income as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're starting to see, less is becoming more, right? I think a lot of different, the kind of younger generations are more about experiences and are becoming more minimalist, and they're okay with, not living in a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 3,000 square foot home. They're okay with living in smaller spaces in desirable areas. I think that's becoming a lot more popular and it's trending. And yeah, I mean, the ADU space, it's a very exciting space to be in. I think it's one of the spaces, investment spaces that offers the most opportunity right now for investment real estate.
Okay, awesome. And so those of you that are just jumping on, feel free to throw any questions in the comments. We'll try to get to them towards the end. So the 750 square feet, you can't go above that amount. Is that correct for Atlanta?
That is correct. That is the maximum size in city of Atlanta.
Okay. And then each jurisdiction has, slightly variations of that as far as different maximum sizes you can build out to.
That is correct.
All right. So let's kind of dig in a little bit to the process, Jeff, in terms of what's involved. And so is there other requirements for the lot itself in terms of the size in order to do this? Obviously you got to have enough room in an additional to put an additional ADU like this. And so what are the typical requirements for that? If I have a half acre or 3/4 of an acre, what's that?
So I would say 99% of the time, if you live in city of Atlanta, you're more than likely zoning is going to allow you to put an ADU on your lot. There's 3 zoning designations within city of Atlanta. There's 3 zoning districts in city of Atlanta that allow for accessory dwelling units. That is the R4 district, the R4A district, and the R5 district. And if you're not sure of your zoning district, you can go to Google, type in City of Atlanta GIS map. I believe that stands for Geographical Information Systems. Don't quote me on that. You go there, you type in your address, and it's going to tell you what the zoning classification is. And again, it's R4, R4A, or R5 allow for ADUs in City of Atlanta. But yeah, I mean, with majority of the lots that we built them on, stuff we see, most of the lots will allow for an ADU. Obviously, the size of the lot is going to basically dictate if you can get that maximum size of 750 square feet on your lot.
Now, if I've got a larger lot, like, close to an acre, am I able to do multiple ADUs?
Do you want to go down that rabbit hole?
Well,
so I mean, the short answer is no, right? A lot can have one accessory dwelling unit in the R4 and R4A district. There is something in the zoning code. It's called a guest house, which some people use those interchangeable with guest houses and ADUs. But yeah, the short answer is no. But if you look into the zoning code, there are other ways to achieve getting multiple doors on R4, R4A, and R5 lots. So, yeah.
Got it. All right. So we check with the zoning. It's in the correct zone. We've got enough room on the lot. What are the next steps in terms of, planning and architecture and plumbing, electrical, what does all that look like from a planning perspective?
Yeah. So all of our ADUs, the ones that we build, they're all stick built, right? So There's extensive site work that goes into play. There's a foundation, um, and we build them just like we do our single family homes or any type of construction in the residential construction realm in Atlanta, right? They're not they're not manufactured products, what you see that I think like Home Depot and Lowe's are marketing tiny homes where you can, buy a pre-manufactured product and they come drop it and deliver it on your lot. Yeah, we don't do that. It's these things are built to last. I think you'll get easily 100 years out of them. But yeah, there's definitely some kind of weird nuances when it comes to building an ADU in terms of tying in utilities, sewer, water, things like that. Our ADUs are all electric. We meter them individually from the house. So that way, if, homeowner buys an ADU and they don't want to rent it out immediately, but maybe a few years down the road, it can be metered separately and you can let your tenants pay for that, pay that power bill. And then sewer and water, there's a couple of different options with water. I would say 9 times out of 10, we pull water off the house, or if the client wants to pay the enormous fee for a new water meter, you can put a water meter on the lot and have it metered separately. And then, sewer, we just tie in sewer to the main house, and that's essentially how it works.
Is there like a minimum requirement for the depth of the foundation, or like a standard?
No, I mean, I think what's most common in the marketplace that I see are crawl spaces or slabs. Most of our ADUs are on slab. It's usually a monolithic slab on grade. So,
all right, and then the process. How long does it really take from kind of start to finish from a new build perspective?
That's a question that I get asked pretty frequently, and I mean, we've built ADUs in as short as 2 months, right? From we get permit till we get our CO. That obviously requires weather to cooperate, right? If it's raining, it makes it very tough to build anything. And so, yeah, if we've got good weather, I would say on average 3 to 4 months is what it takes for us to build an ADU from the time that we have a permit in hand.
And then what about the average cost, or is there such a thing?
Yeah, there is. A lot of folks reach out and they ask, what's a good square foot price that I can use for an ADU? And I don't ever recommend using a square foot price as a metric to gauge the cost of an ADU, just because you're working with such minimal square footage, right? And, 10, 20, 30 square feet can really swing that price one way or the other. But our models that we sell range anywhere from 189,000 to 239,000. The 1.1s obviously are on the lower end of that spectrum, and the 2.2s are on the upper end of that spectrum.
All right. And so besides the square footage, is there any limitation on the height of the building?
City of Atlanta, the maximum height's 20 feet.
20 feet. Okay.
20 feet. Yep.
All right. And then, so we got someone mentioning that they've been waiting on a CO for months now in Fulton County. So is it still kind of a lengthy process for permitting and on new construction in Atlanta?
So City of Atlanta, it's actually, I mean, knock on wood, it's gotten a lot better. I mean, historically, building permits have taken 3 to 4 months. Now we're getting our permits in around a month, 4 to 5 weeks. So yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing.
Okay, awesome. And then you mentioned financing, and so are you able to get traditional financing to do this if you wanted to look at it from a project perspective?
Yeah, so financing is still it's a tricky question. There's not really like a one size answer fits all. Majority of the folks we're building ADUs for are either bringing cash to the table, or they're getting a HELOC, which a HELOC is a home equity line of credit. With obviously the Fannie Mae product rolling out like 3 to 4 weeks ago, that's going to kind of change the game a little bit, I think, and allow people to get a conventional loan to build an ADU. But yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing right now in the market.
Got it. I'm going to throw your website out here in the comments
Sure.
so folks know how to get a hold of you. Feel free to reach out to Jeff. And so basically, you're helping. You're basically the building contractor for this project. If I were to engage with you, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. The ADU program that we offer, it's completely turnkey. We handle everything from the permitting process to the final CO of the project. Yeah, that's basically it.
And then how do your services? How does your fees work for your services?
So we build our ADUs on a fixed cost. So
So
ahead of time exactly how much it's going to cost from start to finish.
got it. And are you seeing much competition with other types of there's like almost like RVs that are on wheels. There's the container homes. There's all these different types of tiny home similar products. Are you seeing a lot of competition for that? Or are you seeing that in that realm, people either want to kind of a new construction stick bolt or they don't?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's like I said, I think it's definitely a space that is changing rapidly, right? People are trying to figure out, especially, in today's times with, I think interest rates peaked just above 8%. And, there's people out there that are struggling, right? And they're trying to figure out supplemental ways to bring in more income. And so, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think that, is there competition with container homes and, like Airstreams and stuff like that? I mean, the folks we're talking to that, I don't think they're not building an ADU with us to go put an Airstream in their backyard or put a container home in their backyard. I think the concept is very different,
Mm-hmm.
because our ADUs really live like a single family home. And, I think one of the topics that I always bring up is, there's a lot of pressure on a lot of these municipalities to provide, an affordable housing component to the marketplace. And so I think, when I started building these, right, it made sense mathematically, as I mentioned before, from an investment perspective. And so I said, okay, that's fantastic. Check that box. And I said, eventually, I think zoning laws will change and allow you to subdivide a lot and sell off the house independent of the ADU. So, for instance, if you approached me and you were like, hey, we want to buy, a house with an ADU, I have to sell you both of those together.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And I think that, like I said, I think in about a 2 or 3 year span, I think you're going to see some zoning laws change that will allow you to split them and sell them independent. And in doing so, that will give you an affordable housing option in Atlanta. I think in some of these in-town neighborhoods, you could probably get anywhere from, $300,000 to $400,000 for one of our ADUs. And so when you water that down and you really take a look and peel back the curtains, it's like today in the city of Atlanta, you want to get into a 3-bed, 2-bath house that's 1,300 square feet, that's not new, that's, I would say, rent ready. It's going to cost you about $500,000, and it's like, again, it goes back to the point that I made earlier, people can't live in the communities they serve. And now all of a sudden, if you're able to sell an ADU in a neighborhood like Reynoldstown or Ormwood Park or Edgewood, Eastlake, Kirkwood, all these in-town neighborhoods for a few $100,000, now you've got an affordable housing element that you can bring to the marketplace. So
Very cool. Very cool.
I say that because you're not going to sell an Airstream independent of the house. You're not going to sell, I guess, a container home. You could if it's on a foundation or what have you. But I think that in terms of value for value and getting the most out of your investment, I'm going to bet on ADUs over anything else in the market.
Awesome. Have you seen that evolution in other cities where they've allowed, kind of gravitated towards being able to split the lot like that?
Yeah, I mean, if you travel out west, we did a family trip earlier last year, went out to California and stayed in Venice Beach. And I mean, literally every single parcel out there has an accessory dwelling unit on it that you can sell off independent of the house. And what we were finding out is most of those homeowners, they haven't sold them off. They actually just rent them out and have that supplemental income to offset mortgages. So yeah, it's they're very popular out west. And you know, I think that Atlanta, and probably more so the Southeast, has really lagged behind in terms of zoning and keeping up with higher density developments. I mean, city of Atlanta specifically hasn't really changed their zoning laws since like the early 80s. So that's over 40 years ago. And, you know, think about, you know, how much has changed in Atlanta in the last 40 years. I mean, let alone the last like 7 to 10 years.
Definitely. Yeah, someone in the comments mentioned Seattle is another one of those Western cities that are doing the subdividing.
Exactly.
I got a few other comments here. I'm looking to add ADU to rental properties in Georgia, Florida, Texas, and he can provide financing in those areas as well. So that's another option. Someone else is doing 2 in their backyard right now in Clearwater, Florida. And so are there other areas in the Atlanta metro that besides Atlanta, and I think you mentioned before DeKalb or Decatur, that are friendly for ADUs?
The two most friendly municipalities that I'm aware of in kind of the metro Atlanta space is going to be obviously City of Atlanta is the first one, and then City of Decatur. There are other municipalities that allow ADUs, but there's some restrictions, and they put restrictions in place that don't make them investor friendly. For instance, DeKalb County, you can build an ADU. However, they make it mandatory that either the house or the ADU is owner occupied.
Got it. Now you had mentioned before we jumped on that your preferred area for providing your construction services is within the city of Atlanta. I've actually got some students that are looking at projects in the mountains that are, you know, like a 5-acre lot of land that they're doing multiple ADUs on. So that's a project that's out kind of further out of Atlanta is not something that you guys would get involved with at all.
I don't think at this time, no.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So this has been very informative. You know, I think we've got a lot of folks that are actively looking at ADUs or doing ADUs. Like I mentioned, I put Jeff's website in the comments here. And so feel free to reach out to Jeff, let him know that B&B Investing Group is where you saw him. And he'd be happy to touch base with you and kind of give him a lot more details. So is there anything else, Jeff, that you want to touch on that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, if you guys have like any specific questions, you can hit me up on Instagram. My Instagram is just Jeff Flips. I can type it. Can I type it in the comments? Let's see.
Yeah, sure.
Join the chat. Here we go. Let me type it here in the comments for you. No, it's not letting me.
It's Jeff Flips.
Yeah, it's just spelled out.
All right.
And I think there might be an underscore at the end. Yeah, there's a underscore at the end, Rich.
Underscore at the end. All right, I'll look it up and make sure I put it in there. But yeah, thanks again, Jeff. Really appreciate it. It's been very informative. And are you doing any? I know that you've done some tours on some of your properties. Do you have anything coming up in the springtime on that at all, or?
Yeah, we try to do like one event a quarter, just to try and bring awareness to the community. So yeah, we'll have one coming up probably when it warms up a little bit.
Okay,
December,
awesome.
January, and February are pretty cold months in Atlanta. But yeah, I think probably once we get closer to like March and some warmer weather, we'll host an event here in Atlanta.
All right, perfect. I'll make sure I'll keep an eye out for that and let everybody know when that information comes available. So thanks again, Jeff. Really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for jumping on this week on the B&B Investing Group Live, and we'll definitely see you guys next week. In the meantime, if you guys have any questions, like I mentioned about ADUs, feel free to reach out to Jeff. I'll put his Instagram information out there shortly. And then also, if you want to reach out to me directly about scaling your business with short-term rentals, feel free to do that on Facebook Messenger. So until next week, thanks everybody. We'll see you then.
Cool. See you guys.
Thanks for jumping on the BNB Investing Podcast this week. Please click on the subscribe and like button below. For more trainings, property tours, and content, you can join my BNB Investing Facebook group by clicking below. If you are ready to grow your short-term rental portfolio and maximize your monthly income, you can click on the link below to schedule a quick strategy call with Rich or someone from his team to see how we can help or point you in the right direction. Stay tuned for our next episode and hope to see you on the BNB Investing Group podcast.